Welcome back to the Black Liberty Podcast. Appreciate everybody tuning in today. Today, I have a co-host. Finally have a co-host. The one and only, my old man, my father. He's going to be co-hosting the podcast with me. Makes things a little easier for me, but also we can get more than one perspective on certain topics and certain discussions that we have. So let's go ahead and hop straight into it. Today's topic is very, very serious. Are white people conditioned to be racist in America? Before we go into this, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Follow, like, if you're listening to it on YouTube. If you listen to it on Facebook, follow YouTube, hit the like and subscribe. So let's go ahead and get into it. So there's a quote from Jane Elliott, who has been doing racial studies and tests all over the world for many, many, many decades now. And it's something that she said: we are still conditioning people in this country, and indeed all over the globe, to the myth of white superiority. We are constantly being told that we don't have racism in this country anymore, but most of the people who are saying that are white. White people think it isn't happening because it isn't happening to them. And I wanted to kind of expound on that and start the discussion off with that, to kind of get a better understanding of what we're talking about here today. We're not talking about and not saying that all white people are racist. We are saying they are conditioned to be racist. Racism is something that is learned. It is something that is taught. Am I right? That's right. It's something that is taught. So it is something that can be unlearned. But the issue and the problem is you have to be in a place where you want to unlearn it. And we'll get into that as we go further into detail. And we have many more questions and stuff on about this subject. So, are white people conditioned to be racist in America? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think this is a very difficult subject that most white people tend to shy away from. And it's not that they are bad people or that they want to be racist, but the key word is conditioning. It's conditioning. When you grow up in a society that promotes white supremacists, it's hard for you to see it when you are the only beneficiary of it. For an example, if you grow up in the school system, you are taught that all about the white presidents and how great they were, how much of a genius that they were, but it overshadows the fact that they had slaves. They treated people horribly. Yes, the founding fathers, but there was a dark side to it, and so they were racist. And it's hard for white people that are taught that their heroes were actually people that were racist and owned slaves and also murdered and separated families. And so this is what this whole thing is about, accepting the fact that even your heroes had not only just flawed, but were people that subjugated other people and oppressed other people. So
right.
It's that simple.
And that's so true. And it's like being taught to walk. So as a child, in order for you to be able to walk, you have to first learn how to crawl. And teaching someone who has been conditioned to be racist, teaching them to not be racist, you have to really be careful, because sometimes people don't know that they're racist. They don't know. It's a simple conditioning. It's what they've been taught their whole life. It's just like walking. So now you have to learn how to use a whole new set of legs. And it takes time. And for people of color, I mean, we're talking 400 plus years. So for us, we've been on the short end of the stick when it comes to oppression. And so for us, we ready to go, because we've learned over centuries how to deal with oppression and how to deal with people that are racist. But we have to also be able to take a step back, and we have to be able to understand this racist person that you're talking to might not even realize that they are racist. So how do we go about introducing to them, different perspectives and different ideas? And to me personally, I feel like it starts with the younger generation. It starts with our generation growing up in the 90s. We experienced racism, but there was a lot of love and a lot of peace and a lot of unity in the 90s. You had pockets of issues and problems here and there, but the generation before us and now the generation after us, their experiences with racism is crazy. The people that they are coming across, the issue, what's exposing racism today is cameras. They're getting caught now. So it's not that it wasn't there in the 90s growing up in my generation. It's just that it wasn't caught on camera the way that it is now. Everybody didn't have a cell phone with a camera on it in their pocket. So now that it's being exposed, we're starting to get a better understanding of how to interact with somebody that is racist. And a lot of times when you come across somebody that's racist, it's about giving them a reality check. Because like I said, a lot of them don't realize that they are racist. So that reality check is what kind of makes them sit back, if they want to learn, makes them sit back and be like, okay, something's got to give. Something's got to give. Because you can't just tell somebody, hey, you're a racist, you don't need to be racist anymore. What's that going to do? It's not going to solve the problem. It's not going to stop them from being racist. If anything, it's going to make them even more racist because of that superiority complex. So we get into, do most white people know that they are racist?
I think the answer to that would be no. And the reason why I say no is because, for an example, you're not born racist. You're conditioned to be racist. Right. And there are some people that's subconsciously racist, and yet they don't seem to understand when they say certain things how it offends people of color. Right. And in their heart, they actually mean well. Right. In their heart, they actually do not hate people of color. Right. And they want to fight. You look at the Black Lives Matter movement in the marches, you see a lot of white people marching, in for that cause. Right. But there's a lot of white people that actually want the race relations to be a lot better. Right. They love all people, but yet they don't know that they have been conditioned to be racist. Right. And the key is to listen. Listen to a person of color and let them tell you about their experiences. Right. Because then and only then you will learn exactly what's going on. Right. So it's just so important to open your ears. And here's the thing. When a person of color, a black person, actually tells you about their experiences and point out to you the racism that they experience, and also point out to you your mistakes, right, as far as racist words, racist attitudes, if they're pointing it out to you and want to dialogue with you, that white person got to understand that's called love.
Right, exactly.
That is called love. And because they're trying to present love to you so you can open your eyes, right, and see, rather than presenting revenge to you.
After 400 plus years of being the reason for oppression, is it really that easy to accept when someone's telling you are being racist?
No, it's not easy.
Like, I can only imagine growing up and looking in the history books and seeing and being taught that you are superior and your race is the great race of the world, and then turning around and somebody telling you that it's not, that it's all a lie. So I think it's a matter, what you're saying is true, and I also think that it's a matter of both sides have to come to an understanding, black and white, and especially in America. They have to come to an understanding. white people have to understand that we don't want to be oppressed. We don't want to be oppressed. It's not something that we wake up every morning and we're just comfortable with being oppressed simply because slavery was 250 years ago. Because one thing about our people is we pass stories down. We don't need pen and paper to pass our stories down. We etched them into the land. We built pyramids to tell our stories. Mountains where we left markings and drawings to tell our story. So at the end of the day, they have tried so hard to erase our history, but yet we are still persevering. Right. And when you look at the European history books, everything has been so misconstrued and everything has been so whitewashed to the point where for us, we can look at that book and we can tell it's full of lies. Mm-hmm. Nothing in this book is true. Mm-hmm. But for a white person looking at it, because their parents and then their grandparents and then their great-great-grandparents and so on has conditioned them the same way they were conditioned to believe in all the whitewashed lies in the history books. And it's easy to manipulate a child into believing something that is not true than it is an adult.
Yes.
And that's why they start so early in school with the conditioning, because you can look at a child in school and you can tell that child that George Washington was a great man and a great warrior, but what they won't tell you about George Washington is he lost more battles than he won. They won't tell you that the teeth that he had in his mouth were not made of wood, they were made of slave teeth. They won't teach that the furniture that plantation owners, that slave owners had was literally stuffed with human slave hair. They won't teach you these things because then it diminishes that superiority perception that they created for 400 plus years of themselves. They won't teach you that the black era in England, when Moors, black people, ruled England for hundreds of years. They won't teach you none of that. And so to go to a white person and try and teach them and tell them something different, it's almost like shooting an arrow at a brick wall. It's going to take, you might not ever get through that brick wall. Mm-hmm. But the thing about it is, you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. And that's a very good point, because what I hear all the time is that when you point out things like white supremacists and oppression, one of the backlash that you get from other white people is that, well, you just make an excuse for being oppressed. You need to do something with your life, and don't see, the thing about this is that just because you point out the oppression and what's going on and you're fighting for your people doesn't mean the oppression is going to stop us from being successful. Exactly. It's not an excuse. And that should even show you even more. Even though we point out the oppression, we're not using it as an excuse to stop moving forward. Right. So, but if you see it as an excuse, then you're the one that's using it as an excuse not to listen. Exactly. Just think about it. Exactly. It's not to listen. And that's the thing that will really help a lot of white people, is to realize when you hear black people talk about things like this, they're not making excuses. And here's the thing about it. Why would you judge a person as using oppression as an excuse when they're trying their best to get you to understand what really does exist? Why would you do that?
It's conditioning.
It's conditioning, especially when you're not going through it.
Right.
You should take the time out to listen.
Right.
Just because a person is oppressed doesn't mean that they want revenge.
Exactly. Oh, because we could have been to revenge.
That could have happened a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. You saw all they don't teach you about all the slave revolts and all of that. Yeah, yes. Nat Turner and all of them.
Exactly. But if you don't listen, sooner or later, a people is going to rise up.
They're going to get fed up.
And they're going to get fed up about it. So I think it's a valid point.
The thing about it is, this country, America, really better be happy and glad that black people haven't got fed up yet. Honestly, that's just being real. They better really be happy and glad that we have not got fed up yet. Because the moment we do, see, you think that little riots and marching and all of that is destruction. You think flooding the streets and screaming Black Lives Matter, y'all white folks see that as destruction. Let me explain something to you. There's a difference between, I'm just going to say this, there's a difference between marching for equality and justice and breaking into a Capitol building and terrorizing a Capitol building,
yes,
threatening to kill the representatives of that Capitol building.
Yes, January 6th.
January 6th. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference. No matter how much you try and compare the two, there's a big difference.
Huge difference.
We march and we fight for justice because we are treated unequally in this country. Still, after all the progress that we have made, we are still so far yet from true equality. That's why the podcast is called Black Liberty. It's because we have not been liberated yet from oppression and racism. We still are experiencing this every single day. Mm-hmm. So to try to use the fact that a black person has money or has become successful as a way to say, see, racism don't exist. If you work hard, you can make it. Wait a minute. Look at the story of those black people. Look at everything that they had to go through and where they had to come from just to be able to even get a taste of what success is. And even then, look at all the obstacles that they had to jump, all the hoops and hurdles that they had to get through and jump over, compared to a white person that is literally born in the privilege in the country.
And can I weigh in on this?
Mm-hmm.
This, when you see someone that is not successful, a person of color, a black person that's not successful, that's talking about this, it doesn't mean they're not working hard. Right. Everybody that works hard doesn't become a millionaire. Everybody that works hard doesn't mean that they're going to be at the top of the ladder of success. Exactly. Some people, you got to understand, going through oppression, it doesn't mean that's going to stop you. But just because you don't see me as a black millionaire and someone else is, it doesn't mean that I did not work hard. Right. It's the same. When a white person tells a black person, if you work hard, you will be successful. That's assuming that I'm not working hard. Exactly. It's the same thing as you growing up in a society of white privilege, right, and you hear some white people say, well, I don't benefit from white privilege. I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of money. It's the same thing. Right. Just because you don't have a lot of money doesn't mean you didn't grow up in a society that's white privilege. Exactly. Just the same as just because I'm not successful don't mean I'm not working hard. Right. People gotta understand, when you speak, always pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth, because 9 times out of 10, it comes back on you. It judges you. Right. It judges yourself. Right. And so, for an example, when you said, can black people be racist? That's the question I want to put out. Yeah. Is it possible for a black person growing up in a society that promotes white privilege, can they be racist?
No. Absolutely not. In order for, now, can black people be prejudiced? Yes, we can. But we also have to understand that our prejudice, and I'm not making an excuse for any kind of prejudice in any kind of way, but we have to take a deeper look as to why black people feel how they feel when it comes to white people. We literally have 400 plus years of proof and evidence to say, I don't really trust you. I don't know you. I don't trust you. If I've never sat down and had a conversation with you, just based on the simple fact of history, lets me know that the possibility of you being racist is really high. it's not that I'm calling you racist, but the possibility of you being racist is extremely high. And so I have to be cautious. And 400 plus years of history in America teaches black people to, and you know what, honestly, I wouldn't even call it prejudice. I would call it being cautious, being careful, because 9 times out of 10, every black person that you come across has experienced racism in this country at least once in their life, based off the color of their skin. And some of us experience it way more than others. But I don't believe that in order to call a black person racist, or in order to say black people can be racist, we would literally have to control the power structure in this country for 400 years. It would take hundreds of years. We would have to oppress white people the way that they oppressed our people. We would have to enslave white people the way that they enslaved us. We would have to create laws and create a system that mass incarcerates and genocide, mass genocide. Like, there would be so much that we would have to do, because white people have to understand that if the shoe was on the other foot and our people did your people like that, you would feel and be saying the exact same thing.
Do you think that people say you're living in the past when you point out these differences and these different topics and points, and trying to, what do you say to people that say, okay, you're living in the past? Because I've heard that said to me, well, you need to move from the past and move forward. Well, how do you respond to that?
It's still happening today. See, we have to understand that the last slave in America was not freed until the 1960s. The last slave was not freed till the 1960s.
I didn't know that. Wow.
There was literally a plantation in the 1960s where they cut off the people. They cut them off from even knowing that they were free. And we're talking, this is 150 years after slavery was so-called over. So, I mean, to say that we're still living in the past, we could give you a whole list of people. George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, and we could keep going. Trayvon Martin. And the list just goes on and on. Philando Castile, like, the list goes on and on and on and on of our people still being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's being caught on camera, that should show you that it still exists.
Right. Exactly. It still exists.
It still exists. So to sit here and say that we need to stop living in the past, it's easy for you to tell the oppressed to stop living in the past when you are the oppressor. It's easy to say that, because you don't have to feel what we feel and experience what we experience every single day. And I think the question of, can black people be racist? I think that is a question that white people push and ask to try to take the attention off of them.
It's just like saying a man next door beats his wife for many years, and she gets away from him. She divorced him finally after being beaten and abused for 10, 20 years. And now that she gets out and she goes and become a public speaker, and she teach about abuse, domestic abuse, women being abused, other women, how to get out of it, how to point out when a man is abusive. Would you go to her and tell her that she's living in the past? No, you would say she's helping other women come out of an abusive relationship. Exactly. Because she's been through it. Exactly. It's the same thing that when we are talking about oppression and about a society that promotes white supremacy, we're not living in the past. We're teaching you how to get out of it. Exactly. It's just like in critical race theory. Many people say we don't want that taught in school. We don't want that. That's teaching kids to hate America. No, it's teaching kids that America hated. Come on. That's a difference. Right. It's teaching the kids to a particular situations that happen so the children will not repeat that same pattern.
Exactly.
So it's not teaching kids to hate America. It's teaching kids about hate in America. And you have, and here's the thing. I have a proposal. And tell me what you think about it. I have a proposal. If you don't want critical race theory taught in school, then my proposal is this. Stop teaching lies about your forefathers and put the truth in the history book. If you think critical race theory, which is simply teaching the truth about history, then you got to stop telling the lies about history in your schools and replace it with the truth. If you care about the truth, put the truth in the history books and tell the truth.
Right.
That's my proposal.
But they ain't gonna do that, because if they did do that and whatnot, then that literally would tear down overnight. That would tear down the power structure that they've been building for 400 plus years. That perception of America that they've been working on and trying to push for 400 plus years, it would crumble overnight. And so now it's like, okay, so stop living in the past. But like you said, with critical race theory, y'all don't want to teach critical race theory because us as black people are asking you to teach the true history in school so that we can tear down the conditioning and we can stop the conditioning of racism in America. But yet here in Illinois and whatnot, y'all passed basically critical race theory for Asians. Y'all passed a law that it has to be taught. The oppression of Asians in America has to be taught. But yet you deny us what we've been fighting for and crying out for. You deny our history being taught. In Texas, getting rid of Martin Luther King speeches, getting rid of the word slavery, turning it into indentured servitude, getting rid of, what is it called? Getting rid of teaching that the KKK is morally wrong. This is stuff that y'all are doing today. If y'all want us to stop living in the past, stop walking around and floating your Confederate flags. Get rid of your Confederate flags. That's living in the past because y'all lost. So you can't sit here and tell us because you don't want to hear about racists and you don't want to hear about racism in the country. If you want us to stop talking about it, you get rid of your Confederate flags, and then we can have a conversation about not talking about it. But until that power structure is done and over with, we gonna keep talking about it and we gonna keep fighting for justice. So, last question of the podcast: do we think we'll ever beat racism in America? Do you think we will?
I'm optimistic, but I'm not sure. Because first, when you lay the foundation, then you built thereon. You build on top of it. I don't think America right now is ready to remove that foundation. I believe someday, and I believe really someday, that they will. But what we have to do as a people is to rebuild our foundation and not look for them to rebuild theirs, because that don't mean hate. I'm not preaching, separation or anything like that.
Right.
What I'm saying is this. It's hard to tear down the structures that's been up there for 400 to 500 years and longer.
Right.
You have to, like you said earlier about the next generation. I believe this new generation is really tired and they don't want to go backwards because they're fighting for their cause. And so the politicians and all of the people that don't want change but want the status quo, all I have to say to them is that, look, there is a God. And he sees what's going on.
Right.
And trust me, he will take care of it. Right. So I believe, as relate to our people, is that keep moving on, keep moving forward, and just look and know that God is on our side.
Right.
And on the side of all those that love justice and peace.
Right.
And so I'm optimistic about it.
And I agree 100%. And I think that if we did get to a point where we could beat racism, it's gonna take us continuing to fight for a very long time. But because we don't see the end in sight when it comes to racism, don't mean we stop fighting. We still have to keep pushing. We still have to keep talking about it and take little victories. Little victories. I know sometimes we get upset. We don't get the outcome that we wanted, but if we can get some kind of justice or some kind of outcome, let's take that. Let's build on that. Let's continue working, because the racism will end in America. It will. Even if we don't see it in our lifetime, it will end. Because you also have to understand that America is becoming more, not a melting pot, more of a mixing pot. A lot more people are 2 or more races in this country. They have parents who are of different ethnicities in this country. And the more that happens, the harder it becomes for racist people in the country to hold on to that power structure. Because now it's hard for you to be racist when you got nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters that are half black, or mixed with any other race. So continue to fight. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. We're going to go ahead and sign off. And until next time, I love everybody. Continue to grow. Continue to have faith. Continue to motivate each other. Continue to love each other. And just embrace one another. Now is a time where we need to embrace. We need to show that we can support each other more than ever. So again, signing off. Is there anything you wanted to say before we go?
I enjoy being your co-host, and I'm looking forward to other episodes, future episodes. This has really been great.
Appreciate y'all. Love y'all.